Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
The World According to Elmer is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Crooked River Radio is an internet radio station that is live 24/7 playing top 40 hits from the 60s through the 80s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden, and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River. Welcome aboard. We're headed for the World According to Elmer, with hosts Gerry Sorensen and Pat Morrow. Don't worry, you'll enjoy it there. Better buckle in and enjoy the ride. Here come our hosts now.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is Gerry. I am KG8RRY, and with us tonight is our Elmer, Mr. Pat Morrow. Pat is N8OQP. Pat, how are you this evening?
What, no phonetic tonight? I'm disappointed.
No phonetic. I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. I was in a pretty good mood tonight, Pat, till I was listening to that last song before the program started.
You know, one of
now
my
I'm
favorite...
kind of in a fit of despair and depression, so thanks for that.
Didn't mean to do that way. Stewart's always been one of my favorite artists.
Well, yeah, I used to like him about 150 years ago myself.
And some of his best tunes were the slow stuff that he did. You know,
Well,
I always liked Maggie May and that kind of stuff. But
Right. Well, I liked Maggie May, too. Do you know what year that came out?
Oh, mid-70s, I think, wasn't it?
Suffice to say, the old dude there has been singing that same song now for the last 80 years. So there it is. But we're not here to talk about music tonight. We're here to talk about ham radio. What else is there?
Doggone right.
I'm back fresh from my 6-meter AM net luncheon today. We get together once a week at one of the little greasy spoons here in the city. And we sit around and we talk about our doctor visits. We talk about our colonoscopy stories and just catch up on
kind
all
of like
the news,
80 meters, huh?
80, just like 80 meters, except it's in person. It's really dull. My wife said to me one time, maybe I should go along with you to one of those lunches. I said, honey, you're welcome anytime. Bring bring something to keep yourself entertained, because there's not much else for this particular group. We're all at that age now where everything is starting to break down. The engine light has come on the body, and so all we do all day long is run from one doctor to the other, and that's all we talk about. So there you go. But every city should have that type of a net that lets all of us this keeps us from tying up your repeaters, guys. So believe me, support your senior citizen ham radio club. So
and enjoy us while we're here.
I did get some of these this week, Pat. Some of these QSL things.
No, you didn't.
I know that this surprises you all the heck. But here's a new friend. He is Kilo Zero. Got to be careful with that. You know, if you say, "Oh," most guys will hop on your back. Most ham radio operators, like I've got a friend who is what is his calling? Oh, W0IQK, and he's like zero, and he just pronounces that real slow whenever he's talking. Whenever somebody asks his call sign, so this is a big deal to some of these guys. So this is K0EJ, and he is a member of the Tennessee contesting group. And I had a chance to catch up to him on sideband one night, and he sent me this nice card. So, Mark, thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is a dandy card, Pat. Wait till you see this one. This is CT3MD. Look at that beautiful card.
That's a pretty card.
Isn't that great? Let me see if I can get it closer here. This is from a place called Madeira Island in Portugal. And there you go. Jose is the operator of that station, and he's got a beautiful picture on the back too. But check this card out. But this is a what they call an IOTA, an IOTA. This is a island on the air.
Yep.
And he sits out there on this look at this beautiful island. This is where this guy lives. He's not living in Massillon, Ohio. He's down there in a little town called Porto Santo on Madeira Island. And this is just a beautiful card. This is far and away my favorite card that I've gotten in a while now. And this fella here, I picked out three that kind of interested me for different reasons. But this fella here is in Colorado Springs, which is where my wife is from. He is N0LUF, and you can see this is a homemade card, although he did work the front range. That's Pikes Peak right in the center. He did work the front range onto his card. I don't know whether he got that as clip art or whether he drew that himself. But it's kind of funny on the back because he said, Gerry, he said, I got to sending you this, and it's my last stamp. Oh, no. So I got his very last postage stamp. So if you're listening tonight to the program, Brian, 73, thank you. It was a nice conversation I had with you. It was nice talking to you. And hopefully you have obtained more postage stamps in the meantime, and you have something to continue to send your QSL cards
All right.
with.
I got one for you. Are you ready for this?
Do you?
Yeah, hang on.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Oh, wow. Check that one out.
Yeah, ain't that pretty?
EG3SDC. Well, now, first off, where is EG from?
Spain.
Wow, Spain. Nice.
And we did that. I was on 30 meters FT8.
That's a beautiful card.
It was 10-137.
Very ornate, nice color.
And I was really impressed when I looked at it. I'd remembered getting it, and I remember telling you guys I'd bring it in here tonight. And,
I'm glad you did. You know, you see those beautiful cards like that, and then I get my cards out, and I'm looking like this right here. I'm thinking, Gerry, you ought to spend some money on your cards. I mean, people look forward to these. It's the only reason I go to the mailbox anymore, frankly.
That actually was an electronic card. I'd like to get more.
Right?
I really would like to get more of those because it.
Now, did this come to you in your email box?
Yeah, it was an email.
Something like
they sent
EQSL,
it. They sent it via the QRZ.
Very nice, and I didn't even know that could happen. So if people can send you these types of cards through QRZ, is that right?
Well, he probably made this with a software or a card maker, I would imagine. But
right.
he actually got my address through QRZ.
I see. Okay, so you got it that way. And so you have your email address on your profile.
Yeah.
Very smart.
And when I got it, I thought, man, that's all right. And then I remembered talking to him. I looked it up in the log. I did talk to her. I did make the contact. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You don't do on FT8. You don't do a whole lot.
You were on frequency 10.137.
Yeah, it's 30 meters.
Yeah, is that a good band for you at your station, Pat?
Oh yeah, not a problem with it at all. Most of the time, my antennas are thawed out.
Oh, okay. You've come back into the land of the living again with all the rest of us here.
Yeah, once
I was down for 2 days on 6 meters. I could not get a decent SWR. And finally, I went out on the second day at the end of the day, and I took a big, tall broomstick. You should have seen me standing out there. I had a one of those short step ladders. There I am in the middle of the snow, and I'm 6'4", so I'm standing on top of the step ladder. And as far as I could reach up into the air, I've got this broomstick, and I'm beating on my 6 meter wire. It's fortunate I'm able to do the show tonight because really, by all intents and purposes, at my age, I should be in the Cleveland Clinic because of that.
But anyway, when I got that, I thought, what the heck? As far as the antennas go, I've been pondering doing something just for this style of, or this time of the year. I may end up putting something as far as a big stick up on the. I got a balcony out in the back.
Yes, you do.
And I could probably put something out there. I've got 2 big sticks. I bought them for the car. I just have to figure out a way of doing radials on it.
Yeah.
Or make it a dipole or something. But I've actually thought about the idea of doing that. I may just, now that I've got all the time in the world to do that,
Retirement is great.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it actually.
You're not missing. driving around all day
No,
working?
not a bit. Not missing
uh,
that stinking snow 2 weeks in a row now. No, thanks.
It doesn't take long to get used to retirement, trust me, and it only gets better. So you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, we are. It's been
Now, this is a very good lead-in that you just did, because we're talking antennas tonight, and you were talking about maybe possibly putting the stick up on the balcony. One of the antennas that I installed when I wanted to make certain on Christmas Eve that I could hear a station called SDQ out of Sweden, is which we've talked about, is I installed what I call a loop on the ground. And a lot of people have different drawings and different ideas about antennas they call ground loops. And some of these are meant to transmit. Some of these antennas are only meant to receive. Now, the loop on the ground that I put on in my backyard is a loop that is only intended to receive. There's no transmitting taking place from the backyard on that antenna. That loop right now, which has just peeked out again from underneath the snow, is 6 inches off the ground. And this loop runs from one corner of the back of my house all the way. My yard is 50 by 50. I've got a postage stamp backyard here in the city. And so what I did is I went 50 foot back with an insulated copper wire. And then I went across the backyard again, same wire, another 50 feet. I came 50 feet back up and then 50 feet back across the house in the back. It's all 6 inches off the ground. And I use this antenna much in the same way that a beverage antenna works, in that it is a receive-only antenna. Now, there's no electronics to this whatsoever. The only thing that you'll find out back with this wire, besides the insulators and the wire itself, is you'll find a plastic box that I bought off the internet. That's it could be used for anything. It was called a project box. And I bought that off of the net, and that's where the connection is inside that box that connects my coax that runs up into the radio room from that particular wire antenna, that loop. And I was successful in hearing the station in Sweden that night, and we showed the QSL card here on the program a few weeks back. And so that was very exciting. But I've expanded now my experimentation with this antenna, and I'm trying to find out some of the things that it can do and some of the things that it can't do. And it seems like once you start a project in ham radio, Pat, you just all of a sudden there's this avalanche of information that comes at you, because if you say anything like on a site on the social media, or if you say anything here on a radio show like this, or anything, if anybody finds out in your club that you have an interest in this area, then pretty soon they start throwing stuff at you. Everything that they read about a ground loop or a loop on the ground, all of a sudden it starts to accumulate in your email box. And so I've read a couple of hundred articles that have been written on these different loops. There's one fellow that uses his up in Michigan, and his works 80 meters for him, and he actually uses it frequently. But his is 15 feet by 15 feet by 15 by 15. So his is a 60-foot antenna, and he said it works great for 80 meters. The experimentation that you do with these loops is to find what is the appropriate amount of wire. Is it better if the wire runs one direction? Is it better if it's in a square? Oftentimes, when the word loop is used to describe a ham radio antenna of any type, we're thinking in our mind of this balloon-shaped, we all went to high school, right? Yeah. So we all sat there in science class. We know what a loop is as opposed to a square. But many times, loops are in the shape of a diamond, depending upon a person's backyard. In my case, the shape of a square. Sometimes loops can be in shapes of rectangles. So when you say loops, it doesn't necessarily mean a completely round antenna. People do with them as they choose. Sometimes you see these diamond-shaped antennas up in the air. There was a great CV antenna back in the 1970s called the Moonraker. And yep. the Moonraker, did you ever see one of those?
8 element beams, all they were.
You betcha. And those things, that was 8 loops electrically. But you didn't see a loop, did you? They were shaped in diamonds because there's only so many ways to hold that wire up in the air. And,
Yep.
how are you going to make a loop out of a thin wire? So in this case, each one of those loops on the Moonraker was shaped like a diamond. So you can use your imagination on how you set your loop up. The Beveridge antenna, the receiving antenna I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is far and away the most successful receiving antenna of all time. There's a reason you can't transmit with them. I never can remember. Pat, you've told me one time,
It's got a 470 ohm resistor across it.
Okay, so that's why it's a receive-only antenna.
Yeah,
but it's an amazing antenna. And in fact, if you remember the story, when they did the first transatlantic communication, which we celebrated the anniversary of here just a few months ago, the antenna that was used to receive that transmission was a Beveridge antenna, because Beveridge had actually met the fellows that were involved in the project for the ARRL on the boat on the way over to England. And he had a chance to sell his antenna design to these guys. And so that was the antenna that was used for the most important transmissions of all time. The transmissions that taught us that we really don't have any limit to time nor space, in this hobby. You can talk anywhere in the world.
I think if I was going to go back in time, that would probably be where one of the places I'd like to go. I'd like to hear the first transmission.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
I'd also like to do the Alexander Graham Bell thing, be there for the first.
Come here, Watson, I need you, or what was it?
I think it's Watson, come here, I need you.
Yeah. He had spilled, right? He was calling out. There's Watson listening to it on the telephone. That's awesome.
We had a trivia question on the net last night that I came up with, and it kind of applies here, so I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. After the invention of the telephone, what was and before the word hello was used to answer it, what was the common greeting?
Oh my goodness. The early days of Ma Bell, and there was I've always just, from the time that I was alive, it was always hello. I mean, now I try not to ever say hello, because I've been taught now that the computers can tell if you use the word hello, and that's when they begin their sales pitch. So I try to say other things like, can I help you? But, back in the early days.
I'll tell you what. I don't
know.
Think about it, and we'll do it after the clip. Well, I'll give you the answer after the clip.
That's great. And I'll give you a trivia question, too, that we'll answer at the end of the program. So if you're listening here at home, this is more than just for Pat. This is for you also. Of the radio transmissions that were first heard across the pond, so as to speak, when we first began this great adventure known as ham radio, most of the transmission, there were several transmissions that were heard over a period of about a month. Most of the transmissions that were heard, not all of them, but most of them came from one ham radio club. And do you know the name of that club? That's the question. So if you do know it, don't say it, Pat, because we'll give everybody else a chance to think about that too. And by the way, Google is cheating.
Yes,
you know
Google
who you
is
are,
cheating.
and you know whether you're cheating or not.
The same way with my answer too.
But I'll tell you later on in the program. Remind me, Pat, in case I forget, what the name of that club was. The ham radio club that reached Europe most often when they were testing the equipment to see whether or not we could transmit across the Atlantic Ocean. So anyway, tonight we're talking about loop antennas. There are more than just loops to receive on. There are loops in the air, and you can transmit on these loops. And so here's a guy to talk about one of those antennas, one of the loop antennas that he has. So let's see what he has to say. You guys are listening to The World According to Elmer, perhaps watching. And this is the Crooked River Radio, and we will be back right after this video.
Hello, folks. It's Tim, Golf 5 Tango Mike. Hope you're keeping well. Now, I've had the chance recently to look at a very interesting antenna that a good friend of the channel, Rick, DJ0IP, over in Germany, has published on his website. And if you want to see Rick's website, I'll leave a link in the description below. He's really into his antennas. And he published a really good description of a loop antenna. a full wave loop basically on 80 meters that he thinks will work really well as a multi-band antenna. So let's take a look at Rick's design, shall we? As you can see, Rick's antenna is what he calls the 80 meter lazy loop. Now I think he's calling it the lazy loop because basically you can feed it in the corner, as you can see there, with 450 ohm ladder line, and with minimal effort get several bands out of it. I think that's why he calls it that anyway. The antenna itself, as you can see, has 4 21 meter legs. So what's that in feet? Ooh, I don't know. Someone will tell me. Probably something like about 70 feet or so. Each of those 4 sides. So 4 21 meter sides. Now he's got it there at 10 meters above the ground, but we're going to look at it at both 10 and 12 meters above the ground, okay? We feed it in one corner with, well, in this instance, about 50 feet of 15 meters of 450 ohm ladder line. And I'll tell you why in a minute. We're choosing that length, but any length is fine. Just enough to get it to the tuner in the shack, basically. Nice, good, big, fat, balanced tuner would be good. And yeah, we'll look at it on both with both heights. Now, the reason why I've got it at 10 and 12 meters above the ground, and the reason why we're looking at 50 feet or 15 meters of 450 ohm ladder line, is a good friend of mine called Tom is looking to move QTH over the next few weeks, I think, and he's going to a much bigger, lot bigger garden, so he's able now to think about putting in one of these antennas, the Lucky Blighter. So he asked me to look at it in modelling to see whether it sort of comes out with Rick's conclusions, because Rick says that basically this antenna should give very good gain at high angles for both 40 and 80 metres, so really good for sort of, well, in our case, into G and short stuff into Europe, and some DX as well, but mainly for that. But on the higher bands, it gives some really good low angle gain, according to Rick. So let's have a look on MMANA. We fired it up a few hours ago to have a look at the program and what it told us, and let's see what even ANA told us about the loop. Let's start off at 80 meters then. So as I say, we've got blue and red, and these are the far field plots. So blue is the antenna at 12 meters above the ground, and just going back to the picture, just to show you basically you can support, or Rick in this case has supported each of the 4 corners with maybe a 10 meter pole or something, or a tree of that height. Gives you an idea anyway. So going back to 80 meters then, we've got it at 12 meters above the ground, which is 0.15 of a wavelength, or with using the red color there, which represents 10 meters above the ground, just a bit shorter. As I said, I'd spot the difference though, because basically both antennas have excellent gain at high angles, ideal for local contacts on 80 meters. By local, we mean sort of within the UK, a few hundred miles. Very high gain at very high angles. Look, 12 meters is fractionally better on the right-hand side, as you can see. But interestingly, both antennas have gain over 5 dB off the horizon. Wow. At basically 45 degrees either side. So a really good antenna, therefore, for short work on 80. Let's look at 40 then. So with 40 meters, a similar story. Spot the difference again. Both antennas very good for high angles. 10 meters above the ground is actually slightly better than 12 meters above the ground. You can see there red just about beats blue, and this is the only band actually where this happens, but it's hardly any difference. Look, both with peak gain at 54 degrees, 5.2 compared to 5.6 dB. Again, very good for the high angle local stuff into Europe. But Rick says he's worked DX with these sorts of antennas as well, and I dare say you could. Anyway, let's have a look at 20 meters. Now, I've got using the azimuth pattern here for 20 to show some of the lobes, and there's something interesting to show you here. As you can see, blue does beat red here. 12 meters beats 10 meters. Interestingly, if you look at the 4 lobes we have there, the one up at northeast is the shorter lobe, and that's the corner where the loop is fed with the 450 ohm ladder line. Now, if you look at the opposite corner, pointing down to, or say, northwest is the one with the 450 ohm ladder line. The one pointing southeast, directly opposite, actually has the greater gain of all the 4 lobes there, just about. And that's the one that will always have the greater gain. So when we feed a square loop in the corner like this, a horizontal loop, say in that corner, the opposite corner will see the greater gain. And that's quite interesting in all these patterns that we'll see. So going back then to 20 meters, we can see that we've got some really decent gain. 10 meters above the ground, look in the bottom right-hand corner in the dark writing. I'm looking at 5 degrees off the horizon, by the way, so we're looking at DX here. Good angle for DX. We can see the peak gain is at minus 0.8 dB in that bottom right-hand corner of that pattern. 12 meters above the ground, well, it's 0.9 dB, so it's nearly a 2 dB difference between the two. So a little bit more gain being 12 meters above the ground, because 12 meters above the ground is 0.6 of a wavelength and is slightly higher than 10 meters, of course. Now, let's have a look at 17 and above, because this is where we'll start to see some really nice gain. So 17 meters then, and again, 17 meter band, I should say. The blue pattern, again, shows that 12 meters above the ground has better gain, slightly higher gain. Again, we see that peak gain in the opposite corners of the feed point. Look, down towards southeast there, we see a much bigger gain. Again, at 5 degrees, the 12 meters above the ground is, again, nearly 2 dBs better off. A nice 6.7 dB kick there towards that direction, and a decent bit of gain on the opposite direction as well, the corner that's fed, and 1 or 2 lobes as well. You can see the pattern breaking up, can't you? So 17 meters is looking decent. Again, if you are able just to really choose where you feed the loop, you can really aim your peak gain in the direction you want it to be. So that's really useful. So get to know the topography of your land, where things are in relation to where you are, in terms of where America would be, where South America would be, where maybe you're shooting towards the Pacific somewhere, and then feed the antenna in the opposite corner and see where you go with it. Anyway, now 15 meters is looking really good. Now with 15 meters, a similar pattern to 20, but this time we're getting even greater gain now. So 12 meters above the ground, we've got a peak gain of 8.1 dB compared to 6.6 at 10 meters above the ground. But again, nice gain, some nice lobes developing there. And yeah, very nice indeed. 12 meters, similar to 17 in a way, but a bit more of a breakup of the pattern now. But look at that, that peak gain, lobe of peak gain, 12 meters above the ground, nearly 10 dB now there. Very nice indeed, and again some nice gain coming off those little lobes there. And finally, 10 meters is looking an absolutely very nice band for this antenna. Bit of a pattern breakup, but look at all those bits of gain coming off there. And again, in that bottom corner of 12 meters above the ground, we're about 1.5 dB better at nearly 10 dB of gain. So really, the software seems to bear out what Rick says, and Rick has tried, this is DJ0IP Rick, the one who came up with this design online, has used this antenna extensively himself in contests in the past, and swears by it, and you can see how it works so well according to MMA&A. Let's have a look now at the feed line loss, not that there's much, on 15 meters of 450 ohm ladder line then. Let's take a look, and as we can see, I mean, throughout all these bands, there's nothing. The most we've got is 0.4 dB on 40 meters, but look, nothing there at all. So if you could run that sort of length of 450 ohm to the tuner, we're absolutely fine. And that length of 15 meters or 50 feet was specified by Tom, because he reckons that's kind of the length of 450 ohm he's going to need to get it into his tuner, into the shack at the new place. But I mean, to be honest, if you double that length, you know, the losses are going to be quite minimal. So absolutely fine running 450 ohm, isn't it? A great way to minimise losses. Now, the one band we haven't looked at yet is 160 meters, top band. Now, we're running a full wave loop on 80 meters, and this is where we probably are pushing the envelope too much. Let's have a look, though, at 160. Now, if you look at the far field plot, it tells you that basically the antenna itself is... well, what's the difference with 40 and 80? A bit less gain, but it looks very similar, doesn't it? Don't forget, it's very low to the ground now, isn't it? Even at 10 or 12 meters above the ground. And we can see there's not much difference there in terms of their performance. And they have decent gain at high angles. However, if we look at this, looking at that table, the far right-hand column, we've got very high SWR. At both heights, we're knocking on the door of 6,000 to 1, and the reactance is huge. I mean, even if we shoved a really nice juicy 4-to-1 balun at the end of the ladder line and tried to bring all that into play a little bit more, I don't think it's going to do much good. At the end of the day, I think this is going to be a step too far. I think even the biggest of boat anchor tuners are going to struggle to bring this into tune. They might do, but of course, even if you did, if we then look at the losses on the feed line, even with 450 ohm and only with about 50 feet or 15 meters of run, as we can see, look, even using 450 ohm, if we try to bring in 160 meters on an 80-meter loop, we can see that effectively at either height there's little difference. We're looking at around 6.5 dB of loss. You can say it's only an S point, but let's be fair, we're not going to have a very good performing antenna. You can probably get a signal out, but an awful lot of your power will be turned into heat here. So not a fantastic antenna on 160 meters. So we're pushing the envelope too much, I think, by trying to put it onto 160 meters perhaps. But overall, a pretty decent antenna, isn't it? With some really nice gain on those higher bands, especially above 20 meters. So in conclusion then, is this a good antenna? Is what Rick is saying about it sort of tying up with what's on MMA&A? Well, it certainly seems to be, doesn't it? So in conclusion then, for 80 and 40 meters, an excellent antenna for short-range contacts. Very nice gain at high angles. It's okay on 20, it's a good antenna. Starts to really shine over from 17 up to 10 meters at 5 degrees off the horizon. If you get the signal out in the right direction, you can work some serious DX with this antenna, I'm sure. Being a loop is a good chance it'll be quieter and provide a better signal to noise ratio than a dipole, an end-fed or a quarter-wave vertical. Loops tend to be quieter, so it'll be a nice antenna in a nice quiet location. You should get hopefully, lower noise floor on, say, 40 and 80 in particular. And then finally, as a full wave on 80, it's a big challenge. I think that's probably an understatement, to tune and get a big signal out on 160 meters. So there we go, a really nice antenna. And my big thanks to Rick for putting this design up on the internet, and for my friend Tom in letting me know about it. And it's been a pleasure to model it. And not that I'm jealous, of course, but I'm sure Tom will have a lot of fun with this antenna at his new QTH when he moves there. And he's even promised to send me a few snippets of QSOs he'll make with it as well, just to really rub the salt in. So thank you, Tom. 73, thanks for watching. I hope you're keeping well. Stay safe. And there's another video coming up. Just click up on there if you want to watch that too. Please subscribe as well. It'd be lovely to have you on board. 73, and all the best to you. Bye-bye.
And a fantastic job he did. That was well done and well modeled, and we appreciate that very much. 73. A couple of things about loop antennas, and I found that whole piece interesting. The reason that people consider using the loop antennas is the loop antenna tends to be the quietest antenna that you can use. Now, one of the things that you taught me early on, Pat, was that a vertical tends to be noisier than a horizontal. And you listed all the reasons for that. Man-made noise tends to be vertical, et cetera, et cetera. QRM, as we call it.
Yep.
But likewise, you take another step towards being noiseless or the least amount of noise possible when you make a loop. I know that I can have an S6, S7, 8, S8 night sometimes on 80 meters or 40 meters here at the Ponderosa. But if I switch over to the SDR and I switch to the loop, I find that the noise drops to less than S1. And so you have an opportunity to hear things on a loop that you're not going to hear anywhere else because the noise level is so low. As we've talked about on our program ad nauseum, noise is a big deal. And if you can't hear, you can't respond.
Yep.
And so what I have been doing, and I've been testing this out, I talked with a friend that I have in a place called Lafayette, California, and we arranged some testing last weekend. And what we did is we had a conversation with each other where we transmitted to each other using our radios. So I fired up the Swan 700CX, which is about 400 watts barefoot, and I was ready to go. And he fired his Swan up. He had a Swan 500CX that he was using, which is about 398 watts, and he was out in Lafayette. And so what we did is we transmitted to each other, and we had a QSO, but we did not listen to each other on our transmitters. We listened on our SDRs. And it was amazing. We did these comparison tests where we would use the transmitter and the receiver on our Swans, and then we used the receive off of the SDRs. And frankly, there were times during the conversation where if I had been using the radio as opposed to the SDR to listen, there are things that he said I would have never heard because because at that particular day over the weekend, really noise wasn't too bad, but we had about an S6 noise here in Massillon, and I live in a residential area, so I get a lot of man-made noise. Have you noticed how much the noise has gone up since all the heaters are running all the time in everybody's houses in the winter? Well, there you go. One shuts off, and then the next guy over on the other side of you, his turns on, and so you got all this noise all the time. But that particular day, the noise on the SDRs was less than S1. And so I heard everything he said just as clearly as if he was sitting in the room with me. And what I want to do as the summer progresses is I want to do the same thing with some friends I have that are a member of the Swan Club that live over in Europe, and one who lives down in Argentina. I've always wanted to talk to Argentina, and I've never had a chance to do it. But there is an SDR in South America that is on the air that is available on the internet. So I plan to use the SDR to listen to him in Argentina, and I intend to use my radio to transmit. And it's kind of fascinating when you do that because you can see on the SDR when you're transmitting, you can see your modulation. That's pretty cool when you can see yourself operating. So I don't know, I'm fascinated by it. And I think that I think this is going to be a great interest of mine moving forward, is the combining of the SDR with the station.
Well, I get a lot more joy out of listening sometimes than I ever would talking.
Yeah, well, it took me a while to figure that out, but you already know what I finally figured out, and that is there's a great joy in just listening sometimes. You
can stumble across a conversation or stumble across somebody that you've never heard before. All of a sudden you find out they're in Japan, and that's just so cool to me. I don't myself cheating. We talked about cheating a couple minutes ago.
What's cheating?
Cheating is going to the DX clusters and picking out something you want to hear and going and listening to it. That's cheating.
But I do that.
Turn that damn dial. You want to hear what's out there? Turn that damn dial.
Let me tell you what I use the DX clusters for. Not to get off on the subject on the DX clusters, but I use those if I'm seeking a specific station. If there's like for instance, the last time I used one, I really wanted to talk to that Edmund Fitzgerald station, and so I watched the cluster to see when they came on. And when they came on and I saw them appear on the cluster, I pounced.
I would probably do the same thing there. But as my normal radio listening, I'm not looking usually for anything in particular. I'll scan, if I feel like scanning 40 meters, I'll go from one end to the other.
Yes.
See what's out there. And if I get bored with that, then I switch it to 20, or I'll go up to 80, whatever. But for these people that go out there and in my eyes they cheat using that stinking cluster. Well, what's the sense? If you're looking for something, it's like going to the library. If you're looking for something, go to the library. But if you're wanting something to read, you don't have to go to the library to read it. And
that's funny.
Now, do you want the answer to my trivia question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, the question was, before or after the invention of the telephone, and before the word hello was used as a greeting, what was the greeting, or what was the original greeting?
And I thought about that all through the video, and I don't know nothing came to mind. I don't know any more than before we went to the video.
Ahoy!
Seriously?
Seriously.
That was the greeting?
Ahoy.
The greeting sucked. Hello is a whole lot better.
That's why they changed it to hello.
Of course, if you don't know that hello is something that you do, that's kind of a funny word too, isn't it?
Wasn't Bell one of them was military? You'd almost think something like that would.
Yeah, that sounds like something somebody in the military might come up with. Ahoy!
Ahoy there!
Ahoy!
Ahoy there, matey!
How about avast? Avast, you mateys!
I don't know so much about that, but I was kind of surprised when the wife actually came up with that trivia question.
That's a great question.
I'll give her credit for that one.
I will tell that question at the next meeting of the 6 Meter AM Club next Tuesday at B&K. I'll say, hey,
you heard it here first.
We may not know anything about ham radio, but doggone it, we know trivia. That's pretty good. I'll give you the answer to mine too before I finish up on loops there. But I asked the question, who was received most often in that first 30 or 40 days that they were sending messages, hoping that the people in Europe would hear them? The answer was, there's a club up in New York called the Radio Club of America, otherwise known as RCA. And RCA sent the most transmissions of any other club in the United States that actually reached Europe. And they did it on one homebrew transmitter that they created, and it was a sight.
I was looking at some other stuff, not trying to find the answer, mind you, but I was looking to see where the actual first transmission came from. I thought it was in Hawaii or maybe even Connecticut, but it turns out that Marconi was Italian, and the first radio transmission was from there.
Yeah, well, and then there's people that are very angry about Marconi's history, that claim that Marconi had nothing to do with radio, and on and on and on. But every great person that did something important ever in this world has been criticized, because it's only the people that are doing something that get criticized. Everybody else just sitting on their butts at home. But Marconi, you can try to vilify him, and you can try to ignore his accomplishments, but Marconi was a great man. I absolutely believe everything written about the things that he did.
From what that thing said, he actually got to the English Channel first, and then with some modifications, he ended up going over the English Channel, which I think would have ended up in RCIA, or the radio RCA, mm-hmm. And because it said that he actually jumped the pond, and 2 days later received an S in Morse code. I think it was 2 days later. Actually received it where he was. Interesting stuff.
Oh, it's good stuff. And these antennas, these loop antennas, back to the subject, it's good stuff too. I mean, here's the thing you got to understand. He's talking about using that antenna that we saw tonight to transmit as well as to receive on. Yeah. All I'm doing on my antenna down at 6 inches off the ground. And by the way, Gerry, why is that loop 6 inches off the ground? Why isn't it, let's say 15 meters above the ground? It's purposely put 6 inches off the ground so that the noise reduction occurs. The closer you get to the ground, the less noise there is. And so since the receive antenna isn't dependent upon any height to transmit, because it's not being used for transmitting, it's best to put it as close to the ground as possible, because that's the lowest noise. And it receives just as well as if it were 100 feet in the air. All it's doing is receiving. But you'll notice on his different antenna modeling snapshots that he took, the difference in that antenna from not only the little bit of difference that occurred as far as the height was concerned, but in addition to that, the different bands that he was on. One thing you need to understand about transmission antennas that you taught me, actually, Pat, is that the closer you place them to the ground, remember the time we were talking about NVIS antennas? There was a big deal angle. Like a year and a half ago. Everybody all of a sudden, ARRL started talking about NVIS, and pretty soon everything at the ham clubs, the meetings were NVIS this, and they held seminars on it, and basically Pat, explain to us what an NVIS, what is that?
Near
vertical.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. It's been a while since I've come. I know NVIS is usually 18 feet above the ground. Right,
and the point of that antenna, creating one of those antennas, is the transmission to the atmosphere is almost straight up.
Exactly.
And so it's a great antenna for in close work. Now, what do you mean, Gerry? Well, I'm thinking like 80-meter use, something where you're getting kind of a regional feel. You notice if you're over on 80, you're not making these big, huge calls.
We used an 80-meter Envis for field day one year, and I actually
How did that work for the club?
I ended up running that station for almost all night. It furthest, you got to understand, we were in Stowe, Ohio. We have a park out there that we set up in, and it's on a place called Groundhog Hill. Elevation's probably about what I got at home. It's probably just about 1,200 feet, and we were 18 feet above the ground. It was strung between two towers, and the range, I did great up in New England, as far as New York, clear down into North and South Carolina on it.
That's a good distance.
And then I didn't do too well with Florida, and as far south as we went, the farthest west we got was Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But
you got past the plains, right to where the mountains started.
Right. And that was a pretty good, decent amount of being able to use it. Not bad for an 18-foot off-the-ground antenna.
And that's the thing. Now, you'll notice that from the modeling, when he was on 80 and 40, you had almost an omnidirectional pattern. And he's right. The takeoff was incredible on it.
When you build antennas, you're actually looking, especially HF antennas, one of the things you got to look at is the takeoff angle. If you got a steep takeoff angle, or if it's just almost vertical, it's not going to bounce as far as something that's at
right back down to the ground,
60, 75 degrees, something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's why you use your terrain too. If you can put it up by the side of a hill, there's possibilities all over the place there.
Yes.
But
yes, that's right.
If you're just bouncing up and back down again, that's another story.
Well, that's it. And here's the thing. It's like FM antennas. You got to be careful with FM antennas because some of them are literally, they literally are like, if you look at the antenna modeling, they look like a ball. And, you don't want that for an HF antenna. You don't want as much of your power going straight into the ground for the earthworms and straight up in the air for the 707 that's passing overhead. You want that going out, like Pat just said a second ago, at a proper takeoff angle. You want that bounce. You want to cover some distance if you're on a 40-meter call or you're on 20. If you're going for distance, you don't want a very high takeoff angle like that.
And by the way, so nobody's confused, in that video, they were talking about 10 meters and 12 meters high. That's to me, that's kind of confusing because a meter in any kind of when you start doing wavelengths, a meter is 39 inches. So if you're 10 meters high, you're 10 meters high is about 36 feet or 39 feet.
That's why he called that a sky loop. He meant that.
And so don't get confused with that. That antenna was at about 39 feet in the air.
Yes, that's right.
And you add another 2 meters on top of that, you're another 76 inches higher. You're at you're over 40, about 45 feet high.
Yeah, this is different than a ground loop. The loop that he was using was a sky loop, or what he was creating with the antenna modeling program. You'll notice when he got off of 80 and 40, he got down onto 20, 17, 15, and 10. You'll notice that the pattern changed. It was not near so omnidirectional as it got down to about 17 meters. It had deep knolls at that point. Really, I didn't think that the model showed that it was really a much better performer than a dipole at that point.
I didn't think so.
In fact, it looked kind of like a dipole.
I didn't think so either. The lobes on that thing, especially in the lower bands.
I did pick up one thing that he said, though, that I think is very important. If you're going to create that antenna, let's say I was going to feed that thing at home from the northeast. So I take my ladder line and I go to the northeast corner. That's where I connect it up. Okay, well, at the 20, 17, 15, and 10 meters, most of the power then will exit that antenna southerly and to the west. And so as long as you know that, then you can plan ahead. And if you've got one particular area you want to shoot for, that's the way to line that thing up.
Yep.
It's kind of like using a beverage as a receiving antenna. You know, you were telling me about the beverage when I asked you first about it last year, and you were saying, Gerry, those only point in one direction. Well, that's true. And in a sense, when you got down on these other bands, you know, the 20 through 10, the same thing pretty much became true of the loop. It was no longer an omnidirectional antenna anymore. The 160, the top band, that was hilarious. I don't know how your radio does with 6,000 to 1 SWR.
I was laughing at that too. That's about where mine's at.
I'm not certain that there is any tuner on the planet. Don't get me started on tuners.
Anything,
but I don't think there's anything you can tune that with, folks.
Anything above 3825 is pretty much dead to me because
I think, yeah. He said, well, the antenna might not be very efficient. And I'm thinking to myself, this fella here is the king of understatement. Basically, it's a bad dummy load, is what it is. So, you know, I'm not sure you want to be a top band man with that particular antenna in your arsenal. You're not going to do well in the contest this weekend, trust me. But yeah, I saw that and I thought, whoa, I've seen some high SWRs in my day, but I have I've never seen a 6,000 to 1. Not a good top band antenna. Have you ever been on top band? Have you ever been on 160?
Oh yeah, I've used it several times.
I can't. Of course, I don't have enough room here to create an antenna to go on it, so I've never been on 160 before.
My Alpha Delta is actually 160 through 10, so it does pretty well with it.
Yeah. What is the longest contact you've ever made on 160, pray tell?
Oh, I think I've hit Spain. Spain and Italy and stuff like that's fairly easy anywhere.
That's not bad. I understand that that's not really a DXing band. Am I right? Or
that's pretty much, yeah. It's getting a little long in the antenna. And it's hard to get an antenna to work right up there. Or down there, now, I should say.
Top band is a big deal in the United Kingdom. They love that over there.
Well,
that's like their band that they go on, like our 2-meter band here that we're doing our nets. That's what they visit. They go out on that 160 and they just sit there and chat all day long.
It's actually 160 is actually bottom band. It's really not top.
Well, they call it top band. That you're going to be a top band man, you got to get on 160, right? That's right. What Callum says. Hey, we're about out of time, but I was able to dig another little video up here, and I just thought it was appropriate because of our subject last week. If you joined us last week, it was probably the best program we've ever done. We talked about weather all the time, and Pat, our Elmer here, happens to be the president of the club in Cuyahoga Falls, and in addition to that, he's the Skywarn dude for Summit County. And so we had an expert right here with us, and that makes for a great program, trust me. If you haven't had a chance to watch last week's show, go to one of the places that this show can be found and hunt it up and make sure that you watch it because you'll enjoy it. It's a great program.
And if you listen, we actually, this week, that show, I liked it so well, we decided to put it back on Spreaker. So if you have a Spreaker account or can get to Spreaker.com, look up Crooked River Radio there. You'll find all our shows, and the World According to Elmer is on there also. Okay.
Well, just hunt up the last show. We talked about weather. It was everything about weather, we called it. And it was about storms. It was about storm spotting. It was about a lot of things that we talked about that had to do with emergencies and the quality of ham radio in the community. So it's a good program. Hunt it up. You'll enjoy it. You may want to show it in your club. But with the few minutes that we have, well, we're actually over. But
we know
the manager stuff. Yeah. We're always over.
He ain't going to fire me.
I'm expendable, but Pat's not.
No way.
But anyway, all that aside, I did run across another fella that talked for a few minutes about the importance of ham radio during the time of inclement weather. So if we can, Pat, let's please roll the weather video, and we'll come back on the other side. This is The World According to Elmer on the Crooked River Radio.
Amateur radio, known as ham radio, is a way of communicating with people using radio frequencies. There are over 1 million ham radio operators worldwide.
Normally what happens is ham radio operators talk to one another. And it's about any subject you might think of. They might talk about a problem they're having with their yard. So it's normal conversations. We just do it over the airwaves as opposed to a phone call.
For many, amateur radio is a hobby, but it's also a vital way of communicating.
Amateur radio, ham radio, is extremely important to emergency management, not just here, but in every state in the United States. It's a form of communication that may work and will work when all other systems are down. And it's proved that in numerous disasters here recently. And so we've got a somewhat fragile communications infrastructure in terms of wind and surge and potential of earthquakes and that sort of thing. But ham radio, being basically point to point, and fairly sophisticated, but it's a much simpler system and not as linked together as some of these other systems are.
You have to go back to what is it that we do. We don't provide primary communications for the public service people who are normally responding to something. We provide redundant communications, backup communications, so that when something else isn't working, you still can talk.
In the last several years, South Carolina has experienced several natural disasters, and when communications go down, the amateur radio operators are ready to assist.
And here in South Carolina, we've got staff and equipment in each one of the 46 counties so that we could potentially talk to them in a situation where the normal systems go down. So it's going to be extremely important to work with these folks and make sure that they're in tune to our systems and they understand how we work and what's going to be expected of them.
These folks are not paid, but they are essential. So what about the future? In the age of smartphones and video games, is the next generation interested in this way of communicating?
They have in the middle school in Aiken, downtown Aiken, Schofield Middle School, they have a club for ham radio. And they just started another club in the high school in North Augusta. I see that that's the new folks coming in.
CQ, CQ, CQ. This is November 4th, Sierra Mike Sierra. We are at school at Schofield.
Annie Matson, an 8th grader at Schofield Middle School in Aiken and a member of the school's ham club, is part of the next generation.
It's just like a way to talk to people, and you find someone out there and you just learn about like their life, and you talk to them about like whatever they want to talk about, and they like ask you about like what grade you're in or what's your favorite color and what's your favorite subject in school and things like that, and you just get to meet so many really cool people.
Annie describes it like a high-tech pen pal. She's been in touch with people all across the world. On the day we visited, she talked with a retired middle school teacher from Connecticut and an operator from Canada.
And back over to you, Annie, at the middle school.
When you make a contact with someone, they send you a QSL card, and it's like this little postcard that has their call sign on it. I'm going here. And they have like all this information about it, and you send one back.
The Ham Club at Schofield has won national awards and made contact with every state and even 48 nations. But for Annie, like other operators around the world, it's not just about having fun and meeting people.
I think it's important to me because it's a really good way to give back to the community. Like, it's a really great way to help people because, like, in emergencies and stuff, you can help people.
If we can encourage people to join the amateur radio ranks, and I find it myself quite fascinating, to be able to, to talk when nothing else works and being able to communicate. And that's the name of the game, is being able to communicate. And if we can't communicate in emergency management and find out what's going on down at the ground, then we're not going to be successful. And so it's so critical. So it certainly would encourage, the younger generation to take a look at it, because it is fascinating in terms of the technology. I mean, when you can take a radio, a relatively small power, a small antenna here in South Carolina, and you can talk the entire world.
Whether in an emergency or for a hobby, the future of amateur radio is not only bright, but crucial.
They said the same thing, Pat, that you said last week on the program here when you made the statement that there is nothing that will replace the man on the ground. The eyes and the ears of the man on the ground, or the woman on the ground, same deal.
Exactly, and that's the big part. A lot of people call this a hobby. The FCC has recognized us as a service. And because of that, a lot of people get confused. Oh, radio is just a hobby. It's not anything.
Even the ARRL has expressed confusion.
And it's not really a hobby. It's a service. We are recognized by the government as a service to them. And, not remembering that will get you in, it can be pretty confusing. But our public service and the way hams jump into service when there's an emergency, we're as good as any of the Homeland Security or anything like that.
People have a false sense of security about their cell phones. It was interesting that one gentleman in the video said, we have a fragile infrastructure as far as our communication system in this country. And really, he's right. The cell system is only one natural disaster away from falling down. A couple of years back, my oldest son, who lives in a place called Lake Isabella in California, a beautiful area, they had fires. And this happens frequently in California for reasons we won't go into here, basically mismanagement of their resources. But all that aside, what happened in his area is the communications system burned up. Everybody's cell phone at one time on one day just went out. That was it. There was no more cellular communication in his part of the world. As far as he could see in any direction, no cell phone. And the only way they were able to get messages in and out of their little community that sits in the middle of all these houses around this lake is down at the bait and tackle store. This is just small town America, folks. Down at the bait and tackle store, the fellow that runs it is a ham radio operator, and he would get on. They would take their messages for whoever or wherever. In his case, he had a message that he had to get out, and he had to get it to my son's wife's parents up north of San Francisco. So all the way on the other side of the state. And the way that he got that message to his mother-in-law is he took that message down to this gentleman who got on his IC 7300 and contacted somebody that he knew in his state that would be able to relay that on to that particular area because they had to traverse the state. And that message arrived according to the time that was on the message that my counterpart, his mother-in-law, got. That message arrived an hour and 5 minutes after he put it in the hands of the gentleman at the tackle store. And so that message traveled by radio across the state, and it got through word for word. And that's the kind of thing that ham radio can do when everybody else isn't talking anymore.
The one thing I don't think we've ever talked about is when you have emergencies like that, you actually have certain groups that do what they call a traffic net. Every once in a while, you'll hear them on the HF bands. And what they do is they take just exactly what you're saying. They'll take a message and they'll give it a number. They will take and find out who is in the area to deliver it. They'll give it to them word for word. The person on the other side copies it down, gives their ID number so that they can track it. And then once it's delivered, he'll come back to their net and say this message was delivered at such and such a time to such and such a person. And they actually practice that quite a bit. There's still a few of those nets around. And
well, he had received, when he received the message back, it had included what was called a word count.
Yeah, exactly.
And when he went back to his original message that he had written out on a sheet, scratched it out on the back of the grocery list, actually, and gave it to this guy. And next time he saw him, he said, how many words were in that message? Because I got this word count. And it completely matched. It was the same number of words. It was amazing.
And that's exactly when it's like if you've ever done anything with any kind of packetizing in computers, as far as
packet.
The
that was
packet
prior to
negotiations
Gerry.
and
That was P Gerry.
Yeah, if it's the nets like that are similar to what those packets are.
Okay.
When it's sent out with the message, but around the traffic, it's where it came from. It's like the header of an email. It's got where it came from, where it's going to, how many words, and I think sometimes it's how many letters is actually in that in the message, so that it keeps it completely together, and that if the word count doesn't match, they didn't get the right message.
Well, it's like he told me. He said, Dad, I could have driven 3 hours, and I could have gone to the next town where they had service, and I could have probably got the message through that way, send an email or whatever. Although he said Mom never reads email, but he could have probably got a message through at great cost and a very time-consuming way for him to take care of that. But he said more than that. He said the fact that he just had peace of mind then. He knew that if they got hurt, if something happened at the house, there would be a way to get help.
Yep.
So now he is pursuing his technician's license himself.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, he wants to get on there. He could have made it easier. He could have actually called the fella downtown from his home on 2-meter, relayed the message to him that way, and the guy could have got on HF and sent it on. So the possibilities are endless with ham radio, folks. It is amazing what you could do in this hobby.
Exactly.
This has been a great show, and I appreciate your time this evening, Pat. Thank you for the education, and hopefully we all learned a little bit about loops tonight. I encourage you, if you have an SDR or if you've had an inkling to get an SDR, build yourself a little bit of a loop out there in the backyard. Make it whatever size you want and just start experimenting with it. You'd be surprised out there, the things that you have not yet heard that you will hear on a ground loop. And so with that, we're out of topic for tonight. But you folks have been listening to The World According to Elmer here on Crooked River Radio, and we thank you for that. You are what make this show. We will see you next Tuesday night right here at the same time on this channel. Pat, have a good evening. Everybody out in the audience, have a good evening. 73 from here.
73, y'all. Have a good week.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. See you again soon.